May the 4th be with you. My name's Angela and welcome to Hobby Night. It's Star Wars Day, and you know what that means. That means we're going back to a galaxy far, far away, and I'm gonna be painting up some sweet, glorious villains, because that's what we paint here. We paint the villains, and I have two in particular that I'm extremely excited to paint up. Two of my favorites. First, we have Admiral Thrawn. Now, this miniature is coming to us from the Imperial Assault game because you can't actually find any other Thrawn miniatures yet. I am really hoping that Shatterpoint changes that because we have seen an inkling of Ezra and the Rebels crew showing up, and Thrawn was their main antagonist. So please, Shatterpoint, give me another Thrawn model. For now, we're going to be painting up the Imperial Assault one, which is great because I actually have the entire Rebels crew already painted up. The other model I'm going to be painting up today is a Star Wars Legion Count Dooku. I love Dooku. I think he's probably grown into one of my favorite characters just because of all the other content that I've seen from him recently, especially those shorts that they did on Disney Plus. The ones with him and Ahsoka, I loved them. It gave so much extra detail to Dooku, and I just, he's one of my favorites. So I'm hoping to do them justice today. We're going to go ahead and get them built up, primed, and painted.
How goes assembly, Angela?
Assembly is actually going quite well. Although, I mean, technically I haven't assembled Dooku quite yet, and Thrawn didn't require any assembly, so that was really easy. But the cleanup process is going smoothly. I've got all the mold lines removed. I think there might be like one or two on some limbs still, but overall, we're doing great. The one thing I did notice, however, is I was doing some dry fitting of Dooku because I think you should always dry fit your miniatures to see how they're going to go together. And as I was doing that, I noticed that when I put his chest piece, or I guess like the cloak with the torso, there's actually a really big gap no matter how much I push these two pieces together, right where the seam is, where the two pieces connect. So what I'm going to do is, as I'm actually gluing this down, and thankfully these are plastic, so I can use my Tamiya extra thin cement, and I will be using this to do the normal gluing process, but I'm also going to be using some sprue glue. Sprue glue, that's what this is. And all sprue glue is it's Tamiya extra thin cement mixed in and melted inside of it some plastic sprue bits. You can do this with any of your plastic sprues. I used a lot of the ones from my Warhammer miniatures, but it works super well. And what this does is it creates this sort of gooey medium that you can use to gap fill. And it works super well, but also solidifies the pieces together and hardens them because it does have the adhesive in it. Wish me luck. And then after that, we just need to get them primed and we can start painting some of my favorite villains. Hey guys, I just wanted to jump into the video to remind you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, especially if you're enjoying the content that you find here. And if you're into the spicier side of the hobby, well, my Only Fanatics VIP page is currently 50% off through the end of the month for new subscribers. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, use the link in the video description below, and I hope to see you there. Now let's go ahead and get back to the video. We're gonna go ahead and start with Thrawn, and after getting him primed up in a medium gray, we're going to immediately move into a pre-shade process, and I wanna pull in some blue tones here because, well, Thrawn is a very blue man, and he has a very icy visage. So we're going to work with some blue grays as we build into our highlights, starting with a light blue gray and progressively adding more and more pure white to this mix until we finally end with a pure white highlight. I absolutely love the way that this pre-shade method works out, and I'm really happy, especially with how his face is looking, because we have a great blue tint already there, which we're going to enhance with our next step. Let's work on that cool, cold visage that Thrawn dominates so much. And for this, I actually want to lean towards some of my icy color tones from my contrast colors, specifically Pylar Glacier. This is a very, very transparent pale blue color tone that I think is going to work perfectly with our grisaille technique and all those highlights that we built up to give us a gorgeous natural flesh tone for our alien man here. And I love how this works. Now, I do occasionally have to come back in and mix a little bit of opaque white paint in with the blue to bring out a few highlights specifically on his brow and the bridge of his nose. But then I end up knocking that back even more with some more of just the normal contrast color. And again, I really, really like how this works. Painting alien flesh tones, I find to be so much easier than painting human flesh tones. And I feel like you can see that with just how simple this process was. Now, once we're done with his flesh, we can go ahead and move on to his hair, which is actually very quick and easy to do because all we need is a deep navy blue contrast color and apply that to his hair in one coat, and immediately it's looking perfect and right on spot with the reference. The last thing to take care of on his face are those classic glowing red eyes. Now, this is a little bit of a challenge because the eyes are very small, and I don't have a good way to use a micron to dot these particular eyes, but I have a nice bright red color tone from the Army Painter, which I'm able to use a small brush on and dab in there and really get the effect that I'm looking for. And I love the way that his face and hands have turned out. And now we can work on that crisp, diligent uniform. I want to focus on the white of his uniform next. Now, I've already established some beautiful highlights and shadows on the uniform with my grisaille technique at the beginning, but I want to enhance those further, specifically the highlights, which is why I'm going to slowly layer up some very thin amounts of opaque white paint over all those highlights until I am feeling satisfied that they are looking as opaque and crisp and clean as Thrawn's uniform should be. This works beautifully, and I absolutely love the effect. And once I'm satisfied with how his uniform is looking, we can work on some of the other details like his boots and belt. When it comes to the boots and belt, the original reference that I was looking at, for some reason, I think maybe I was just tired, it was late, it looked like a very, very deep, dark brown, which is why I ended up going with wildwood for his boots and the belt, which I'm going to adjust a little bit later on, but for right now, we're going to leave it layering up that color, making it as dark as possible before moving on to the metallics. Now, I did base all of the things that I want to paint in metallic also in this brown color tone to give myself a nice dark base color to work with. Then we're going to move on to the bronze, which is going to go on his epaulets, which are the pieces on his shoulder. And I love how this looks. It's crisp, it's clean, it works perfectly with the white of his uniform. Then we're going to pull out an even brighter silver color tone, and this is going to finish up some of the details like on his collar, his gun, as well as those pens that are tucked into his pockets on his chest. Finally, we need to take care of the bands that are on his uniform. All those little bars have very specific colors that they're meant to be. 6 of them are going to be a bright blue, the next 3 are going to be a bright red, and then the final 3 will be painted up in yellow. After that, we can finish up some minor details, fix a couple things, and work on the base. I am so happy with how Thrawn is looking, except that I think his boots and his belt are actually meant to just be a flat black. I went back and looked at other reference, and every time I looked at it, I was like, I don't know where I got this dark brown in my head, but I did. It's wrong. So we're going to fix that now by layering on one more layer of wildwood to everything that we painted brown. Then, after that's dried, we're gonna come back in with a black wash. This actually works beautifully and really softens and neutralizes the sort of warm color tone that I was getting from the wildwood, pushes it down, and now they look like a more neutral black, and he's looking a lot more true to the reference. After that, it's just a matter of painting up his base. Now, because all of my other Imperial Assault miniatures have black painted bases, that's exactly what I'm going to do for Thrawn as well, keeping it nice and simple and clean. Thrawn is complete. It's time to move on to Count Dooku. And for his grisaille technique, we're gonna be keeping it a little bit more traditional and going with some neutral gray tones, starting with a light neutral gray and then building that into a pure white so that we can build up our highlights. And I really, really like the effect of this. Dooku's face is gonna be really fun to paint. I'm very scared because I really, really, really wanna do him justice, but I'm very excited with the foundation that I've built up. So let's go ahead and move on to getting more paint on the model. Unlike Thrawn, we're going to go ahead and start with Dooku's outfit because there's some really deep recessed areas that I just want to take care of before I get any other paint on the model. in case I mess things up and I have to do some cleanup. So the first thing we're gonna take care of is the underside of his cloak. Now I actually found a lot of different reference where the inside of his cloak was a variety of different colors. So I just decided to pick the one that I thought would work best with my model, which ended up being a little bit of a light tan color tone. I really like the effect this is gonna have later, and I'm hoping because he has a very dark outfit that this will help it all stand out because there'll be a lighter tone behind him. Once that's done, we are going to go ahead and move on to that very dark outfit, which we are simply going to layer in a single, relatively thick coat of Black Templar. This does exactly what I want. It folds into those recesses really nicely, enhancing those shadows, but gives you a nice solid black color tone on all those highlights, and we just get some very subtle folds in his otherwise very dark outfit. Now for his boots, which are also meant to be black, I'm gonna do something a little bit different just to add a bit of variety, because I often see this in a lot of the reference that I was looking up as well for the character. I'm going to thin the black a lot more this time and apply it in a much thinner layer so that it almost appears like a light gray. I think this gives me just a subtle difference between the pant leg and his actual boot, and I love the look of it. After we're done with that, we can go ahead and finish up his cloak, which has a nice, rich, dark brown as the exterior. I'm going to be using the same wildwood color tone that I used originally on Thrawn for this, and I absolutely love how this looks over the grisaille technique. All of those highlights, all those natural shadows, it just works perfectly with this level of transparency in the contrast paint, and it looks perfect for Dooku. I'm also going to use this on his belt, going ahead and painting over anything that needs to be metallic as well, because I like to give myself that dark foundation to work with. Speaking of those metallics, we're going to pull out a true silver for this, because I think when Dooku left the Jedi Order, he really started to bring in a little bit more of his royal heritage back into his outfit. And so this is going to work perfectly. We're gonna put some silver on the hilt of his saber, on the clasps on his cloak, as well as on the buckle of his belt. I love how this finishes up his outfit really beautifully, and now we can work on his face, which I have a technique that I think is going to be perfect to really bring out all of those gorgeous features. As I mentioned, I was a little nervous to paint up Dooku's flesh because I find painting alien flesh tones a lot simpler than painting natural human flesh tones. However, I have been practicing those natural flesh tones, and I think I have a technique that is going to work perfectly. The first step is to put down Magos purple on all of the skin that we're gonna be painting up. This gives me a nice warm purple color tone that is a great foundation to help make sure that Dooku looks like he's got true blood flowing through those veins and he's not undead, because goodness, that is something that I struggle with when it comes to painting real flesh, is I end up making them look very undead even when I don't mean to. And this really helps. Once the Magos purple has dried, we're gonna come back in with our light peachy flesh tone color and apply this in thin layers over all those highlights and glaze it over some of those more recessed areas, but not losing too much of that purple. You still wanna see a tiny amount of it underneath those peachy colors that you've put down. Once I'm satisfied with the various layers of highlights and shadows that we're seeing on the face and the hands, I'm gonna come back in with a final flesh shade wash. And this is the new one from the Army Painter that comes in their Fanatics line. It's the strong flesh tone, and it worked perfectly to add a little bit more color to his cheeks, really bring some just like life into Dooku, and I love the effect, especially around his eyes. This works perfectly, and I don't even think I'm gonna try dotting his eyes. I'm very satisfied with how the face looks. The last thing that I need to do is just come back in with that same light neutral gray color tone that I used previously and re-emphasize some of the details on his face, like the beard, his eyebrows, and clean up his hair. This looks gorgeous, and Dooku is really coming together. He looks so regal. We still need to take care of the saber and his base, so let's move on to that next. It's time to paint Dooku's red saber, and the first step is we're gonna paint the entirety of the blade in a pure white. This is so we can get a really true red out of the contrast color that we're gonna put on it next, specifically the ball red color tone. I think this is a really vibrant, almost pinkish red, and it actually works really well for a glowing saber effect. However, while that red color tone is still wet and drying onto the saber, we're gonna come back in with a white highlight so that we can get an even finer glow effect. I fiddle around with this, going back and forth with the red and the white a little bit and doing this on opposite sides so we get a true glow effect. And I really like the look of it, although I want to keep working on this. I just clearly need to paint more lightsaber wielding people from the Star Wars universe, whether they be Jedi or Sith, it doesn't matter, but I want to keep practicing painting lightsabers because I think the technique's really cool. I really like the glow effect, but I don't know if I've mastered it fully to the level that I want to yet. However, I'm satisfied currently with how Dooku's saber is looking, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to his base. Now, to make him match with my other Star Wars Legion models, I'm going to first put a layer of the Armageddon Dust texture paint down from Citadel, let that fully dry, apply a quick brown wash to it, allow that to also fully dry, and then finally do some highlights with a nice light tan color just to bring out some of that texture. The only thing after that is to rim the base in black, and we can look at the completed models. And here they are, Count Dooku and Admiral Thrawn. I still don't know if these two characters would have met actually in the world of Star Wars during the Clone Wars or anything like that. I don't remember any media where they actually intersect, but I am very glad to have painted them both today. They gave me really cool, honestly, opposites of each other, because Thrawn is an alien man with really cool, interesting skin tone and a very crisp, clean uniform. Whereas Dooku is a human with a more almost goth aesthetic. And it's just, I don't know, I love the two vibes of them. It was really fun to just paint the two different aesthetics while still knowing that they're both for the dark side. I love Star Wars. I know you guys probably know this with the amount of Star Wars content that I've come out with in the past. And I thought because it's May the 4th, Star Wars Day, why not do something else with it? Because honestly, it's been a little while since we've touched base in the galaxy far, far away. So I really hope that you enjoyed this, that you're having a wonderful Star Wars Day for yourself, and that you're looking forward to more content in the future. Now, before I head out, I do want to give a final thank you, not only to my Patreon members, but also my YouTube members for making it so content like this can continue to happen. Without your guys' support, we just would not be doing this. So thank you very, very much. I have been Angela, and I hope you have a wonderful hobby night. Bye.